Hey everyone, Metagross Freak here, and if you saw my Night Pack Cometh build, which was my 60 card Magic the Gathering deck, then you might be wondering what my EDH deck is. Well, here it is. I have titled it, Why You Gotta Be So Gruul. And it's a red-green deck with Xenagos as its commander. Obviously, I cannot go over every card rapidly enough to make this a short enough video, because I feel if I went over everything individually telling you why I think it's good, it'll be easily a 20-30 minute video. So I'm going to do this really briefly. It's a red-green aggro deck designed to basically just pummel your opponents into submission. Based on mana costs, similar to my green deck, it's mostly land and creatures with a little bit of all the remainders, and it's mostly green. I'd probably say it's about two-thirds green and one-third red, just based on card costs. However, I do have quite a few colorless costs. Looking at mana curve, a lot of the deck is 3 and 4 cost. However, I do have a good number of cards that cost 5 and more. But I tried to keep everything fairly low cost. You know, 2, 3, and 4 cost. That way it wouldn't be too much of a giant pain in the butt. Here's the recipe if you want to copy that. Oh, apparently I can't get the entire thing to fit. There we go. Here's the recipe if you want to copy it. I'll give you a minute. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to go over some of the big cards briefly, because you obviously don't want to see everything, and some of these are fairly common or fairly landmark cards that you should be able to recognize. First off is Xenagos, Lord of Revels. He's the commander of the deck. However, there are two alternate legendary creatures that are red-green that you could use. Xenagos is amazing because he's not only indestructible, but once per turn during combat, he can give a creature haste and basically double its its power and toughness. And he only costs 5 on his first time, so you should be able to get him out pretty quickly. And since he's indestructible, it'll be difficult for your opponent to get him to leave the field. So, they'll probably only get him off the field once or twice per game. So he shouldn't end up costing you too much. It's not like he's going to be like Marath or something, where he's going to cost basically your entire mana pool just to send him out once or twice in the late game. So here are some of the top cards. Archetype of Aggression gives all your creatures trample, and everything on your opponent loses trample. Good card, and only costs you 3. Archetype of Endurance gives everything you have hexproof and takes away your opponent's hexproof, protecting you from further things. In fact, if you have Archetype of Endurance out, Xenagos is basically untouchable because he's both hexproof and indestructible. This is one of the other possible commanders you could use, Atarka. I actually got Atarka in a pretty awesome trade the other day. He is a 6/4 legendary dragon for 7 who has flying and trample. And if you think this is cool enough, he has double strike. Boartusk Liege is another important card. Gives red creatures and green creatures 1/1 each, meaning dual-colored creatures like Atarka gain a 2/2. He's a really fun card, and he has trample. So if you don't have Archetype of Aggression out, that's cool too. Colossus of Akros is another really important card in this deck. He's a 10/10 for 8 with Indestructible and Defender, and for 10 you can Monstrosity him, and basically when he's monstrous you swap out Defender for Trample, meaning he goes from being a 10/10 Indestructible Defender into a 20/20 Indestructible Trampler, which is pretty cool. Another important card, in my opinion, it's a keystone of the deck, is Fanatic of Xenagos. This is a really good aggro card considering it's a 3/3 for 3 with trample, and it either gains a temporary 1/1 in haste, or you get the tribute cost to give it a permanent 1/1. It's not the best card in this deck, but it basically, I feel that this card is basically kind of the epitome of the deck. It's everything is like either it has haste, or it has trample, or it gets more powerful. Another powerful card is Gruul's Horde, which essentially lets you have an extra card in your hand, letting you cast the top card of your library as long as it's a creature card. Another important card is Mind Sparker, which is fairly weak at only a 3/2, but it will protect you sort of from white and blue instants and sorceries, dealing 2 damage for each one. This doesn't like negate those abilities, but if you're playing against a deck that has white or blue, or if you're a good number of my friends who play white-blue decks, this is a good defense, punishing them for basically playing their own decks. There's a Mistcutter Hydra. Protection for blue, can't be countered, gets massive. Nylea, God of the Hunt, who gives other creatures trample, and is indestructible for 4. Let's see. Primordial Hydra gets big at the X cost and doubles itself each turn at the beginning of your upkeep. And if it has 10 or more counters, it gains trample. Perforos, when another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, which is really great. And for 3, it gives Fire Breath. Rubble Hulk, essentially a Dungrove Elder, but for all land, one of my favorite cards in this deck. Rukthar, the other legendary creature, oops, sorry about that, has Vigilance and Reach, and even though he has to attack each turn, he makes up for it by being a 6/6, and when another player casts a non-creature spell, Rukthar deals 6 damage. Considering the fact that 31 of the cards in this deck are creatures and 40 are land, 71% of your deck is going to be either a land, making you immune, or a creature. All the rest of your deck, however, and a large portion of most other people's decks, will make them take 6 damage, which is insane. Another fun card that I have in here, just another card I have in here for fun, is Volatile Rig. Not the best card, but it's a 4/4 for 4 with Trample, who must attack each turn if able. And when he is dealt damage, you flip a coin. Sorry, yeah, when he's dealt damage, thank you. Yeah, you flip a coin. If you lose the flip, you sacrifice him. And when Volatile Rig dies, you flip a coin. And if you lose the flip, every creature and every player takes 4 damage. If your opponent has a bunch of weenie monsters, and they probably will, this basically can wipe their field. However, this deck is designed to make things super big and scary, so you should be fine. And worst case scenario, you'll lose a couple little weenie guys. That's it for the big guys and the creatures. Going on to everything else. Awe of the Guilds makes it so monocolor creatures can't block, making it easier for you to basically just punch your way through. Lead the Stampede can give you some good creatures earlier at the cost of putting non-creatures at the bottom of your deck. Revel of the Fallen God gives you 4/2/2 Satyrs with haste, which is great if you're low on creatures but high on mana. And Triumph of the Hordes, which for some reason its picture's not showing up, but it basically gives all your creatures 1/1 and infect. There we go. 1/1 trample and infect until end of turn, which can be great for a win con if you don't have a giant beat stick to win that way. Enchantment-wise, I run Enchantment-wise, I run Gruul War Chant, which gives a 1/0 and forces my opponent to block with 2 creatures. Into the Wilds to let me play multiple lands. Shiv's Embrace for some regeneration. An Ordeal of Perforos for a little bit of extra damage and for buffing up a creature. Instance-wise, I have Become Immense, which is a delve ability. This is great because I have nothing in the deck to pull stuff from the graveyard. So potentially if you're on the losing side of a lot of blue, white, or black decks, and your stuff is getting waterfalled into the graveyard, you can easily delve to give your creatures a giant 6/6 buff, pretty much for free. Destructive Revelry, which destroys a artifact or enchantment, dealing 2 damage to the permanent controller. Naturalize, again, destroying a artifact or enchantment. A couple other fun cards like Mortal's Resolve, which gives indestructibility and a 1/1, or Dragon Scale Boon, which gives a 2/2 and untaps. I have a Bow of Nylea to give everything Death Touch and other fun stuff. Dark Steel Ingot for an indestructible source of mana. An Explorer Scope to give me some extra lands, in addition to a few other things like Borderland Ranger and a couple other cards that can give me land. All this basically puts together just a great deck that if things don't have haste, then they have trample. And if things don't have haste or trample, then they have 1/1 counters, and it is very, very aggro. For lands, I quickly use a command tower, which basically acts as a red-green land. 19 forests, a Gruul Gate, 16 mountains, Nykthos, again, kind of acting, which gives colorless mana, or I can pay 2 to give me an amount of mana equal to my devotion, which essentially you're tapping 3 lands to get. If you, based on the fact that 2/3 of this deck is green, you're basically tapping 3 lands, preferably either 2 forests or 2 mountains, to gain a ridiculous amount of green mana. A Rugged Highlands, and a Temple of Abandon. So yeah, this is my Why You Gotta Be So Gruul deck. If I could change this at all, I would probably either add a Garruk Wild Speaker or a Garruk Primal Hunter. I don't know what I would take out in exchange for it, but this is the deck that I am currently running for EDH, and I absolutely love it. It doesn't always win, but you're going to have a hell of a lot of fun. Until next time, I'm Metagross Freak, and if this interests you, I hope this deck works for you better than it does for me. Bye. That is not what I meant to do. Goodbye.